telling our stories is part of our healing, is part of our growth, but it can also impact others. And that's where, for me, the great depth comes and the energy comes that says, I'm not just going to do this once, I'm going to do this again and again and again. Not because it's about ego and telling my story, but because it's about the impact that we can have on other people when we take that bold step of saying, I will make myself vulnerable here.
Hey, I'm Julia Lopez, communication architect, international speaker, author of Leading in High Heels, and your host. Welcome to Brave, Bold, and Brilliant podcast. Together with my guests, I will share with you inspiring stories where being brave and bold were the trigger to becoming brilliant. For the past decade, I've been helping professionals to express themselves with clarity and confidence in any stage and arena of their lives. Communication is key to success, and stories have the potential to transform lives and move people into action. There is someone, somewhere, who needs to hear exactly what you have to say. Be brave, bold, and brilliant, and speak up unapologetically. My guest today was born in Scotland and lived in various parts of the UK before relocating to Germany. Morag Mathieson, a graduate in pharmacy, worked in clinical practice where she discovered her love of seeing people develop. Today, Morag is the second vice president on the board of directors of Toastmasters International, an organization devoted to the development of communication and leadership skills. Since she joined Toastmasters in 2006, she has grown her skills and her confidence as she led a pan-European team to significant success, as well as supporting the development of leaders across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Dear Morag, it's such a pleasure to have you here and me, and I really thank you for giving your time to me and my audience. And for the ones listening to us out there, Morag, I know Morag since I think 2015 or even earlier. And we met first in Poznan when she was assigned, she was putting herself forward to become the district, at the time it was district governor of Toastmasters International and in our region in Europe. And one thing that I always admired in Morag, and you will see how she talks, that Morag, no matter how difficult the question, she always answers in a way that seems to be that it was so obvious and so easy that we all feel like we don't even question her answers. So she has this ability of delivering her views in a way that is inclusive and in a way that we feel that we can trust her. And I consider that she is one of the greatest leaders that I know personally, and I'm honored to be here with her today. And I want to just let her to share with us her secrets of when she had to take some brave actions and when she felt that she was bold. And I'm sure you find and agree with me that she is brilliant. Morag, with you.
Thank you, Tulia. It's such a pleasure to speak with you today. As I listen to your introduction there, and I'm listening to you talking about how easy I found it to answer questions, I am reminded of my childhood. And I'm reminded of being probably one of the shyest children in the world. When I was at home and the doorbell rang, I ran for one of two places. If the door of the house was, the back door of the house was unlocked, I ran for the dog's kennel in the yard. And I would sit at the back of the dog's kennel and she would sit in front of me because she protected me. If the door was locked, I would run for the back of the sofa and I would hide there because I might actually have to speak to the guests that came. And my mother would be very frustrated by this child that she wanted to present to her guests. And I just wouldn't do it. I would just refuse to come out and because I'd have to speak to them. There was only one person that I would come out for, and that was my uncle. Because whenever he came in, he would say to my mother, leave her alone. She'll come out when she's ready. And the adults would talk, and then eventually they would realise that I was sitting in the armchair beside my uncle, happily engaged in conversation. And when I think of that, and I think of his wisdom, she'll come out when she's ready, I think that applies to so much of my life. When I look back at not just childhood, but adulthood, career, marriage, voluntary service, all of those things, there was a moment when I guess I was ready. And I had the confidence to step up into the moment. I think that's probably true for all of us, but that moment just comes at different times for us. And if I think in my school years, I was a child who loved school. I loved education, I loved learning, I loved reading. But I didn't desperately want to be noticed. And I can point to one particular moment in education. I would have been about 14 years old when our English teacher set as an assignment that we had to deliver a 5-minute speech in class. And we had one of two topics. We could talk about separating an egg or lighting a campfire. And those are strange topics for teenagers, right? Most teenagers are not interested in speaking about those things. I was a keen Girl Scout, so I knew how to light a campfire. And I had a nice structure. And on that day in class, there were only 5 of us, I think, who spoke about lighting campfires. Everyone else talked about separating eggs. I talked about lighting a campfire. And I discovered in that moment, I held the attention of the class. And it wasn't uncomfortable for me. It really wasn't uncomfortable. And when I look at that, I think, why wasn't it uncomfortable? It wasn't uncomfortable because I found a structure. I found a way to bring information. I found if I did certain things, it was comfortable for me. So I was stepping into that moment of readiness. And I wasn't having to talk about myself. So my shyness was protected. I was talking about something. And I learned from that moment skills that were valuable to me all the way through university. So I studied pharmacy. And in pharmacy, we did lots of presentations of case studies and so on. And that was great for me because I knew exactly what to do and I knew how it needed to be long enough or short enough. And over time, I built skills of what would make a more interesting introduction and catch the audience and have their attention on the subject, how I could round it off easily. And for me, that was a great thing. And when we had to work in teams, most people in my class wanted to be with me because I knew how to do that. And so you had your moment of being part of all of that. But I still had all of that time of not really talking about me. And a lot of that was about shyness. But there was also then later the greater interest in other people. I love to listen.
Mm.
And sometimes when we're shy, we love to listen. Sometimes we don't. But I discovered that's something about me. I love to listen to other people's stories and to listen in the deepest way that I possibly can. And that became powerful for me in a way of building relationships with people. And I think when people understand that you are genuinely interested in them and in receiving from them, then I think that helps a lot in this building of connection and in the building of trust between people.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to what you said there, that you will come out in your right time. But also you mentioned a couple of times that you found your voice by sharing stories to people that you knew that that it would connect with them and would make them feel comfortable, or it would entertain them. And that was your way of breaking through your shyness, correct?
Correct.
And my question to you is, when did you start talking about yourself, or if you have done it at all?
I find when I look over time, I shared little bits, only little bits. We're both part of the organisation Toastmasters International, and the programme there of giving speeches forces you to talk about yourself. And I still remember my very first speech, my icebreaker speech. And I told a story from home where, at home, where I grew up in Scotland, we had a local newspaper in the town that was delivered on a Thursday evening to homes. And when that newspaper came in, the first thing we would do is my mother would open the paper and we would look at the section that was births, marriages and deaths to see who'd had babies, who'd got married and who had passed away in the previous week. And we would look at particularly at the death notices where there would be comments from people. What did people say about them? And my icebreaker was telling that story, but then saying, so what have people said about me? And that was a kind of first step in a way, because I was admitting what other people said about me, but not necessarily telling all of my own stories. And for me, it took quite some time. I would find ways to bring pieces of my story. What I wouldn't often do was share my opinions so much about things, how I feel about things, what I see. For me, that came much, much later, and was one of those moments that I might describe as a bold moment. And it came in 2014. Yeah, 2014, when I was going to Italy. And Italy was in its early days of Toastmasters there, in its early days of growth. And they were having a conference and they asked me to be their keynote speaker. And I thought, okay, I can do this. That's fine. I'll find something that will be interesting for people. I didn't reckon that that would be my moment. And I chose as my subject the subject of passion, because I thought I associate passion with Italians. So this would be a good topic. Let's talk about passion. And as I prepared for that, I looked at actually the brand positioning statement of Toastmasters, which tells a story of people looking at leaders who were all around them, and then eventually finishes with the line that I realized I was one of them, that I was a leader and I was made. And that was one of those moments in the preparation where I thought, this has become my story. I have evolved so much over my involvement here. I have come to a place where I today am ready to tell my story. I am ready to open up about how I feel about things. I'm not worried today if the audience agrees with me or disagrees with me. I'm not worried if I necessarily persuade them to my point of view. I just want to be me before this audience and present my thoughts and my ideas on this subject.
Oh, this is awesome. I will stop you there just for a second, because let this sink in the head and the heart of the listener here, especially the women out there listening to this, because that is my call all the time, that your voice is needed and your story needs to be shared. Because this process exactly is this: when you start writing that speech, that you might start sharing personal experiences, that is a healing process as well. It's a growth and healing process as well. You might discover things about yourself, as you just told us here, that you just realized then, wow, look what I have achieved. I can share briefly a story when about 2015, when I was doing my event in Barcelona, and one of my speakers, a doctor, she said, oh, how can I create this story about myself? I don't want to talk about myself. I can talk about other things. Can I not talk about other things? I know so many things. I said, no, it's about you. It's about your story, because this is to inspire others. Long story short, when we had our rehearsal together, she came to me and said, do you know what? I took a time, I was putting my ideas down. I took the time when I didn't have a husband, children at home, and I decided to write my story. And then I wrote my story, and then I read my story. She said, I started crying, but not crying of sadness. She said, she was crying with joy and admiration for herself, because then she realized how much she had been through, but also how much she had achieved. Mm-hmm. So this is what telling our stories brings to us and to the public out there. Absolutely. That is my side note.
Absolutely, Julia. That was so much my experience of that moment, of the preparation, of finding it emotional for me as I prepared. And then on stage that day, I remember looking at the audience and seeing people weeping. And you have that moment of self-doubt where you say, this is either really, really bad or it's really moving. And you have to make a choice. I choose to believe that this is moving, and therefore I will deliver all I have to. And then afterwards, people who'd known me for many years, several of them came and said, today something shifted. Today, wow, something changed. And others who came and said, I just feel a relief and a release because of what you shared today. And for me, that was a really powerful moment, that telling our stories is part of our healing, is part of our growth, but it can also impact others. And that's where, for me, the great depth comes and the energy comes that says, I'm not just going to do this once. I'm going to do this again and again and again. Not because it's about ego and telling my story, but because it's about the impact that we can have on other people when we take that bold step of saying, I will make myself vulnerable here.
I think even more than bold is a brave, because it's very easy to protect ourselves telling others stories. And I share for myself here that I'm an extrovert, but I realized after going through Toastmasters, working on my own communication skills, that I have always been the one making others laugh, but never really sharing what is inside Julia. Yeah? Yeah. And that is a big step. Yeah. And it comes one step after the other, but is, as you shared very well, is a release and relief when you're able to do it.
I described my journey as the journey from chart to heart, because for me it was always about the facts and the information and the ability to make things simple and plain for other people, and making that transition away from chart to heart, to what is inside of me, because heart connections, I think, are the substance of life. That's what makes life rich and interesting, when we can make those heart connections with other people.
And very much, and now I can see the link from what I said at the very beginning when I was introducing you, that you have this ability of bringing the answers to the most complex, sometimes challenging, because I've seen you in our big conferences, in the administrative meetings, where there are some people challenging and upset, and there's some... The energy is up and the feelings are up and high as well. That I've seen you being challenged with questions, and you always came with this very calm manner, but to the point, bringing the facts, but also bringing this feeling that we feel like that we are protected. And that is, I really admire you for that, because this is a gift.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, but I don't say, by saying that's a gift, not just a gift that is a God's given gift. It's something that you had ability, but of course you worked on that. It comes to that, maybe from that little girl that was shy, observant, but then started learning how other people behave.
If I look at most of my journey, I think we don't live in isolation. We live in community with other people. And therefore we learn things from people around us in different ways. And that can be a blessing, but it can also be a challenge for us. And I can think of one particular moment where I had the opportunity to really grow, or I had the opportunity to say, oh, I'll just stay where I am. And one of those moments came when I was the newly elected district governor, as it was then, of the whole of continental Europe for Toastmasters. On my very first day in office, my predecessor called me and she said, I want to speak to you. I said, yeah, sure, we were friends. We still are friends, I should say. And I went to her home and she talked about the experience of having worked with me when she had been the leader the year before, and what that had been like for her, and gave me feedback about positive things that I had done and how I'd contributed to the team. And then she said words that I will never forget. But if you are to be successful, you have to be more like this and less like that. And then gave me this huge list of, you need to be more like this and less like that. And I found it a bit overwhelming in the moment, but I received it respectfully. And as I drove home that day, I thought about what she'd said to me, and I realized that what she was actually saying to me was, if you're going to be successful, you need to be more like me and less like you. And I thought, I can't do that. I could try that. And of course, we can all learn and grow as leaders, and we can all develop new skills. But if I am to be more like her and less like me, it would be like wearing someone else's overcoat for the whole year. And that's never going to work for me. So then I have to take on board the things that she found that she thought were perhaps character flaws in me, or areas for growth, whatever we want to call them. And I have to take those and think, how do I bring the best of me in leadership? And that then makes you vulnerable in a way, but it also for me gave me power to say, who am I as a leader? I'm finding my voice of who I am as a woman, but who am I as a leader now? I have to discover that. And I have to discover that by reflecting on the things that I experience, reflecting on the feedback of others, of listening, of what is happening, observing, and of assessing the situation of how do I bring the best of me to bring out the best in others for our greater good. And I would say that this was one of those huge defining moments for me when we had that conversation, and when I realized that I can't be a shadow of another leader. I have to be truly me.
She came to you with something that you didn't expect, but that served you as a moment to stop and think and reassess and then decide what you're going to do. This is why I say, like, always the obstacles are opportunities in disguise. Like, every time we are challenged, we should, instead of fearing or panicking, we should take those times to stop and think. Because also in leadership is a constant growing. Our style of leadership changes along the years as we grow, as we learn, as we listen more, we become better listeners, and that's it. And there's no such thing as one size fits all either. Your style, my style, and the moment, they're all components that are relevant to make this to be successful, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is amazing that this was an opportunity for you to reassess and to make a decision of saying, I have to find my own way of doing this, and I'm open to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that has served me well in other parts of my life as well, where I've taken on new projects and new challenges and saying, so what kind of leader do I need to be in this situation? And giving yourself permission to change your leadership style to respond to the situation you're in. And I think you do that best when you understand who you are as a leader. You know, it's that with your feet on the ground and your head in the clouds. So firmly planted of who you are, but at the same time open to look for new opportunities, new ways of working that would be of more benefit to the situation that you're in, rather than one size fits all.
And also, Morag, because we do need to have people coming to us and even challenging us in that, telling us how they are perceiving us, because we can go off track sometimes. And then it is important those moments to see, like, I find this encouraging actually. And the people come to me and then they tell me how they perceive me in a certain moment in time. I always take that well, because and then I revisit that. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to accept it.
Exactly.
But I go back and I think, oh, let me see what why this person it felt that way. And I believe in this moment for us as leaders, we need to learn also to ask the right questions, in the sense that when someone comes with an opinion, because it's an opinion, it's a perception, we ask the questions to try to bring more solid facts of why the person perceives us on that manner, instead of taking it personally, emotionally, and getting upset and not getting anywhere. I read a quote the other day, which I loved. It's one of my in my list of quotes now. It was something like this: "The opinion others have of you does not need to become you."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that is from Les Brown. It's something like this. Maybe the word is different, but the opinion others have of you does not need to become you, who you are. Something like that. And that is key. The people see you from their reality as well, from the way they understand you. They understand what you said, but it's not necessarily what you want to convey. But that's also a good moment for us to make sure, if I'm not coming across the way I want, there's something wrong there as well in my message.
This is where I find, in my particular experience, the benefit of having mentors or confidants who are close to you. And I found myself, when I was a very young, inexperienced leader, often would find situations that made me think, are these people crazy? Why? And I'd be really, oh, how can they think that? How can this be? And I met someone on the way of this journey who sees the world in a totally different way to me, but someone that I trust. And he's called Benjamin. And I would go to Benjamin and I'd say to him, if you had this situation, how would you interpret this? And he would bring me a completely different point of view. And I valued that so much, and more over time, because it was constantly allowing me to check myself and also to check the validity of other people's behavior or other people's opinions. So I could go to him and say, if you saw me do this, or when you saw me do this, what did you think? And then that gives me a perspective that I trust from a mentor, and then allows me to filter through whatever the other person has said to me, and to take from it the parts that I think, yeah, that's valuable. I want to work on that. Or that's just their opinion. They're completely entitled to it. It's their opinion. But as you say, don't let it become you, because it's their view.
And you touched on a very important point here about mentors. We need mentors throughout our lives. I have two mentors now, and I wish that I had this knowledge about having mentors when I was at the beginning of my career, like at university times. But I believe at those times, that was not something very common. And nowadays, everybody understands the importance of mentors. And women out there, we need to find those mentors that are ahead of us, because a mentor is the one who can see what we don't see because they have done it. Yeah. And to have these people that they can give us a hand, but also can kick our butt sometimes when it's needed. Because and having mentors, like as you said, that have a completely different view of the world than you have. You don't want a mentor that agrees with everything you say, but that has a different perception or experience of the world. So then you can have a broader experience and amplify your view. So that is what mentors are for. And I find this awesome. In Toastmasters, we have the opportunity to find good mentors as well. But back to your position as a leader in this big organization now, how many people you have under your management right now, Morag?
So we have in Toastmasters at the moment about 350,000 members. And I'm part of that executive team that's developing the strategy for the organization and taking care of the organization for today and for tomorrow.
That's amazing. And so diverse, so global, so challenging to, in a way, we can never please everybody, but to create an environment where everybody feels served, right? And tell us, one of your biggest challenge since you started your journey as a leader in this big organization, something that you felt like, oh my goodness, I could kill that person. You don't need to give names.
Oh, challenges have come in all kinds of ways for me. And, if I think of challenges with people, one of the biggest challenges I faced was having a leader on my team, a gentleman who, his idea of what was appropriate behavior was quite different to what everyone else thought was appropriate behavior. And as a leader, that's quite a challenge, because for me, I want to believe the good in people, and I want to believe that people can be developed and people can grow from experiences. But sometimes we have to take the tough decisions. And for me, at the beginning of someone's service in an office, there is a period of time when you want them to learn to do the job. You want them to understand the team motivations. You want them to become familiar with the core values we have. And then when someone doesn't live through that, it's really very difficult. And it's very difficult in an organization where we are about the development of the individual, to go to someone and say, I believe that your behavior is harming this team rather than helping it. And we have to talk about whether there is a way forward for you. And when that person says, well, this is who I am, this is how I am, then having to say, then I can't see how we as leaders can be role models in our organization when we won't live up to the values of the organization. And that was a really tough time. And that's one of those moments when, as a leader, you have to be very brave. You have to stand there and say, what is important? What is the best for everyone? And this individual might be disappointed by no longer being part of the team. And maybe they would have grown, but at what risk to everyone else? Of taking that moment and saying, the behavior you want to deliver here, it is not the behavior that helps us. In fact, it does the opposite. And standing for that moment where you put the good of the organization, the good of the many, above what might have been an opportunity for the one. And sometimes I look back and I think, would it have been different? We'll never know. We'll never know. But I do know that at that time, it was the right decision in that moment.
And you said something very important here, Mark, which I truly believe is, I always say, if your actions are aligned with your values and your truth, no matter if in the future you look back and say, oh, I could have done better. But at that moment in time, you knew that you're doing the best you could with the resources you have. and you had in that moment in time. So you're okay. The important thing is to be sure. I always say to my students and my clients is, you have to to develop this self-awareness of who you are and where you're standing, what are your values, but also what are your resources as a person, as a professional, because then you can base your decisions on that. And because even in the future, if you look back and you say, I could have done better, but it's because you grew, and not because you didn't do your best in that moment in time. Because there's the one thing that I absolutely hate here, and I share to everybody, especially women, is the saying this, I am perfectionist. I say to my clients to delete this word from your vocabulary, because I don't believe in perfectionism. Perfection doesn't exist. What I do believe is you doing the best you can in the moment in time with the resources you have. Then you achieve your greatness because you're true to what you wanted to achieve. Perfectionism for me is just a synonym of procrastination, because you're never ready. You're never ready. Perfectionists, they are never ready because there's always something missing.
I like to think of myself as an excellence seeker.
That's awesome. I like that one.
Because I like the idea of excellence, of always wanting it to be the best it can be, really matters to me. And in an earlier part of my life, perfectionism could have killed me, I think, when I look back, that strive for perfection. But the quest for excellence, I think, is something that drives us to review and reflect our performance and say, how can we make it better next time? How do we get better? It's that belief it can get better, and I will find a way for it to be better. So for me, it's about excellence, having this focus on the best it can be, but also the fact that I am an excellence seeker. I'm looking for that. I actually want to take the time to say, how can it be better? How can I be better in this? How do I improve my skills in an area?
Exactly. That's a very good one, because as being an excellence seeker, you have to start moving in order to keep pursuing this excellence, that it grows in the process. That's awesome. I'm going to take that with me, with your permission. Now, Morag, before we start, I know you are a brilliant woman. I love that. And it's your time to brag about yourself here. Tell us one thing that you can tell yourself that I'm very proud of myself that I've done this. This was something that I was awesome. What would be this particular thing that you would share with us?
There are a few things, and that surprised me when I thought.
Oh, that's a good start. I love that. Continue.
I'll just choose one.
Okay.
One of those moments where I had the opportunity to lead a team, a small team. There were 7 of us in the team, to talk about the future structure of Toastmasters in Europe. That was such a privilege for me, because a couple of years before, I'd been speaking with our international president, who at that time was a gentleman called Morag, based in Dubai. And I remember we were chatting, and I said to him, have you ever thought about taking the map of Europe for Toastmasters, removing all the lines and starting again? And he said, honestly, Morag, I've never thought of that. And I said to him, well, I have. And I think that would be a really good thing for us to do. And so then wind the clock forward 2 years later, I get that opportunity to lead the team that will do just that thing. So having that moment of a vision that you've carried, and then being given the opportunity to lead a team across several countries to do analysis work, and was very proud of the fact that I didn't get into analysis paralysis, which would be a real danger for me to go too deep in that, but keeping that focus of leading the team forward, of during the process consulting with many, many countries, of working out how do we communicate this, how do we come up with ideas, How do we invite comment? How do we allow people to discuss this? How do we get the best possible solution that people will embrace? And then it having to be voted on by 2 different groups of people in Europe. And in one of those groups, the vote, I think there were about 15 people voted against and about 160 or so voted for it. But in the other group was that moment of, I almost can't believe this moment, when everyone voted in favour of it. And it was that sense of, not only have we done a job that I like and that I'm happy to put my name to, but we've done a job that other people like. And they see the value in the work that we did and how we propose going forward. And that was that moment of, I almost can't believe it, but yet I know it's true that I've been able to lead a team that was able to do this. And then to stand, 2 years later and see from those 2 districts to see 6 districts created in continental Europe, and that huge celebration of our growth, of our expansion, of bringing the benefits of Toastmasters to even greater numbers of people, to opening up leadership opportunities for more people across our continent, was just an amazing thing to lead that piece that was all about the transformation of a continent. That's my bragging moment.
And you deserve that. Our listeners might not understand the dimension of this challenge. I was there watching in the background, and because just to give them an idea, think about an organization in Europe that then all these countries that had to be then split. They were together, they are not together anymore, and all the emotions that conveyed. It was not only the practical side, but the emotions, the break, the separation, But you all did it beautifully, because allowed, as you said very well, allowed to the grow. It was necessary to break in order to grow, huh?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Morag, any final words that you would like to leave us with?
The words I'd like to leave you with today are, there's a saying I have that says, where we are today is not where we were and not where we will be. And I'd leave that, for me, what that says is we are on a moving journey. We're on a journey of discovery about ourselves. So just because you weren't great at something in the past, or you lacked confidence in the past, and now you might just have that little touch of something, you don't have to stay where you are today, because where you are today is not where you'll be in the future. And hold that hope in your heart for what the future will be.
Thank you so much. That's lovely. Thank you for being here and being you and being a role model for many of us out there.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, Tilia.
That's all for today. I hope you got inspired to raise your game and be brave, bold, and brilliant. Make sure you listen to my other podcasts. Stories are great sources of inspiration and transformation. Subscribe. Remember, there is someone somewhere who needs to hear exactly what I shared with you here today. Be generous and spread the word. Give your feedback and help grow this awesome community. Until then, be brave, bold, and brilliant, and speak up unapologetically.